At what point should a real estate agent fire a client?
There's a lot of reasons why an agent should fire their client. If the client is disrespectful, right off the bat, I'm not going to work with them. But sometimes that disrespect doesn't come as readily, up front as you would like it. Sometimes it gets revealed during the transaction. As soon as somebody shows disrespect, we have to have the discussion. I will not tolerate disrespect. I always show people, the highest level of respect that I can, and I expect the same in return. So if somebody's going to yell, one, you have to realize, okay, there's frustration in this industry, so I'm very tolerant if somebody is angry. They need to calm down. Say, look, let's both take a little bit of time. We'll circle back around. I think right now you're experiencing a lot of
heightened emotions.
Heightened emotions. So I'm going to take a break. You take a break. We'll come back around. We'll have a discussion. In just a bit. If when we come back around, there's contempt, disrespect, that's for me where I'm going to say, hey, look, I don't know if we're really cut out to be working with each other. I value my license and I value my reputation, and I'm not going to compromise that for anybody. So another reason, not to work with somebody is, if they want to do something illegal. Or if they don't want to follow the procedures that they need to follow in this industry. We are very, very much self-regulated, but that self-regulation is very stringent, and we need to keep it that way. We have to police ourselves. So the kinds of behaviors that I have also need to be reflective of what my clients are going to do with their behavior, right? Because I can't have my clients compromise my reputation in the industry, because that can affect buyers and sellers down the road for me. So for me, it's always a matter of operating from the highest level of integrity and making sure that there's respect on all the way around.
Welcome to Behind the Real Estate. I am your host, Paul Ponitkoff. I interview real estate agents so we can hear their real stories. Many of the stories that we're going to hear on this show will not be found in a real estate practice book. We can learn a lot from other real estate agents and their mistakes and find the education and the value within their stories. I'd like to introduce the one and only Mr. David Zabarte with Keller Williams in Walnut Creek. David, it is a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is a treat.
All right. So David, why don't you share with us, give us a brief overview of how you got into real estate.
I had originally taken my first real estate class through the community college over at Diablo Valley in Pleasant Hill in '97, and I really liked it then. I blazed through the class, had a really good time. One of the instructor that I had for the class, she also had encouraged me to get my license and come into the industry. But at the time, I was just more interested in kind of the beginning phases of real estate. Wasn't sure I really wanted to get into sales, and I decided I didn't really want to do sales at that point. But I was invested in real estate, and I thought it was good for the knowledge base for me. But as I started to want to get my life back on track, because my mother had passed away from cancer, and I was in a major car wreck. I almost dead. So when you have those kinds of things happen, you think, okay, what do I really want to do with myself and my time? And I know I wanted to manage my own time. I very, very much always been of an entrepreneurial mindset, and I had always wanted to basically control, the direction and the time that I spend doing anything. Mm-hmm. And, real estate was another way to continue that for me.
So how are you with work-life balance?
My work-life balance, I think, is in a lot of ways similar to the way a lot of agents in the industry deal with their work-life balance.
It can be tough.
there's very few times where, you have a clear cutoff. And I think that that's one of the things that, I'm okay with that because, real estate as far as a career can be all consuming. Like you can do it nonstop and you can do that every day. And because you're working essentially for yourself, we all have our licenses. Either, we're a broker, you got your broker's license, but you're going to hang it somewhere. You're going to hang out with other people. You're going to do, and I've chosen up till now, to, not to get the broker's license because I don't want to be on my own. But no matter where I'm at, it's still all on me. Right? I mean, I'm in an environment where I've got a lot of activity going on, and if I wanted to get a broker's license, I'm probably not going to leave where I'm at. But there's no shortage of things for me to do on a continual basis. So
Correct.
Unless I decide to stop working for the day, like the day just doesn't end.
Do you set up a certain schedule for yourself where you do cut off at a certain time of day?
I have gotten a little bit better. In the beginning, I was working just all the time, and my wife, who I've been with, for probably about 20 years. We got married, 12 years into our relationship, but she had seen what it was like for me in other job capacities, and I think in those situations I had a better cutoff time. But once I started with real estate, you have things that you have to get done. It's time. Time is of the essence. So when there's a priority thing, I don't like to let it sit there. I like to get it done so that I can not worry about it anymore. Because if you've got too many of these things happening and you try to push it off, you just make it worse for yourself later on, right? So I used to work all the way from the morning till I went to bed at night, and in between you're doing your life stuff. And so for me, there's a very fluid demarcation between my personal life and my work life, and that's something for me I'm comfortable with. I think this industry draws a certain type of person. If you have to be a little bit on the strange side to want to do this long term, because I think we have the highest attrition rate of any industry. Okay, there's people who get into it, and even if you're able to do it, you have an aptitude for it. After about 2 years, a lot of people don't want to do it anymore. They find that it's too taxing, on a continual basis, and they just get pummeled by it. And I've seen it over and over and over. It's like, they're a producing agent, but then something happens and it's like the straw, it breaks their back, and then they're off to do something else. They're out. Or they don't make it because, in the beginning when you start real estate, everybody, your friends and your family all know that you just got your license, and you're radioactive. They know that, right? So you might get the first sale be your mom, and maybe the next sale will be your best friend, and they totally trust you because they know how smart you are, and you got a handle on things. So they'll risk their finances on you and their relationship with you, but probably all of your other friends, they want to see that you can hack it for a while because they probably know people who've been in the industry there, and maybe their mom.
They don't want to be the guinea pig.
Nobody wants to be the guinea pig, especially not with their finances and maybe your long-term friendship. And so I think a lot of the agents who get in don't realize what they're going to be up against, because in the beginning you see, it looks easy. You got a friend or a relative who does it, and they see if they're successful at it, what the general public sees is that you make a lot of money for doing something that looks pretty easy.
So let me ask you specifically, what should a new real estate agent expect in their first year in real estate?
Oh, there's a lot of things that they should expect. They should expect to squirrel away at least 3 months of whatever cost of living they need to have, because it's probably going to take at least that long for them to get into contract for the first time. You might get lucky.
That's pretty best case.
The very best case. It's very, very best case. And that 3 months is very important, because even if they got a client from day one, it might take 3 months for that client to get into contract, depending on what the market, dynamics are like. So if you think, okay, I can live off of, 10,000, if I, have to go 3 months, live lean, and then I can start getting my $10,000 checks, right? But being realistic, maybe you're going to get 5,000, maybe you get 10,000, maybe you're going to get 20,000. So if somebody gets lucky and they sell a $800,000 property, that's a big chunk of money that you can get. But you've got to split with your broker, you're split with Uncle Sam, and then you've got business expenses, right? And right from the outset, you've got business expenses that you have to pay for. You have to do it. If you don't do it, you can't be competitive. You don't have the tools in your toolbox to be effective at your job. And I know what I see from a lot of new agents is they don't spend the money where they need to, and they spend the money in places where it's not going to have the payoff, and then they're sunk.
So what would you say your biggest mistake was when you were starting off in real estate?
I would say not allocating my funds in the correct areas. I think I was under the impression that a lot of agents have when they get into the business. That,
allocating your reserves or allocating your commissions?
There was mostly my reserves, because I was prepared, to have to draw on reserves for a while. I also spent money in areas that just wasn't a wise place to put that kind of money. Right? I was concerned about getting exposure, and I allocated too much toward the advertising end of things, rather than focusing more on activities that would get me face to face with people and polishing my skills, from that type of an interaction. Because we're in an industry where we do a hybrid of different duties. We're not salespeople, but we are. Sales is at the heart of what we're doing, but it's not sales in the same way as somebody who's selling a copier, or I know we get compared to used car salesmen a lot, right? But even the used car salesman has a catalog and a book of inventory, and they can look at, say, that car has that feature, but not that one, right? This one has been on the road for 60,000 miles, not that one, right? We don't have a book of inventory like that. Our book of inventory is constantly changing. It's constantly updating and changing value. And there's so much going on in the economy that affects our book of inventory, and we have to understand what that book of inventory is. But we can't know every single property that's available for somebody because it's changing all the time, right? So we have sales that we deal with, but we have to learn more than just the inventory. We have to also work on our interpersonal skills. Our sales skills are important for people because they're trying to make a decision when it comes to real estate that is often fueled by other life things that are going on for that particular group of people. There's only a handful of reasons why people will buy or sell a property, right? So the 5 main ones, I think, are going to be things like births and deaths, marriages and divorces, and job change. And then you've got the one that isn't driven by those kinds of motivations, and that's for investment purposes. So the investor is a different beast because there is no emotion. It's all, does it pencil out or does it not, right? So, but if you are dealing with residential real estate, the 5 reasons that I just discussed are the main ones that you're going to be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And those people have needs that if you don't have the interpersonal skills to help them understand what they're trying to accomplish, it's the same reason why somebody who goes shopping likes to have a friend come with them, right? Do I look good in this shirt, right? They need that, from their agents.
By the way, you look great
Oh, well, thank you.
in that shirt.
This is, my work attire.
Do you mind removing your shirt so I can have it?
No, I'm
Okay.
sorry, you can't have it. But I can tell you where to get one. So, when it comes to, where we're going to allocate our resources, you got monetary resources that, you have as part of your toolbox, right? Where are you going to spend your money to make sure that people can find you and know that you can, help them achieve the goals that they have, right? But you also have resources that you have to work on to build, right? You have to know inventory. And so, like if I have a new mentee coming under to train with me, the first thing that I'm going to tell them that they need to start doing is go look at properties. They need to go and check the current inventory. And if they're from, one area and they want to start learning about another area, it doesn't matter to me, but they need to be going through houses. They need to be going and seeing the inventory because you want to know what's happening at 300,000. You want to know what's happening at 400,000, 500,000, 600,000. Will 300,000 be the same as 300,000 over here? Or, what does that buy you, one city versus another, and why?
So should they go on broker tours,
Yes.
visit those properties?
However they can get out there to see the inventory in the beginning, they need to do that because, I've been through thousands and thousands of homes. So I know when I go into a 1,500 square foot property, if it seems something's off for me, it's immediate because you know what 1,500 square feet is supposed to feel like. It becomes second nature as a trained, seasoned agent when you go through properties. And you're able, in the beginning, you don't really know what it is. But later on, because we deal with, properties on a day-to-day basis, our language can expand. Our ability to know why something feels odd. I know if I go into a 600 square foot home and it feels like an 800 square foot home, why? It's probably because there's no hallways, right? You're not wasting space with, those kinds of, features. So if it's almost like a studio sometimes. If you go into a 600 square foot place and it just feels a lot bigger. Well, that's because of the way of the layout of the property. And when a buyer is going into these homes, they're so overwhelmed with, the decision-making process that, they're really relying on their gut, whether or not they're going to get that buyer, response. And so that starts really when they're, coming up to the property. They get the curb appeal. There's some, butterflies coming. Ooh, I'm excited. This is the neighborhood that we like. That looks like a nice house. And when they open the front door, they're going to get an emotional hit. It's either going to be good or it's going to be bad. If it's good, then the next step they take is going to be with anticipation that maybe they're going to get another confirmation that it's like the right place. If they don't get it when they hit the threshold, and I've been in situations where I've seen this, over and over again. We've, come up, they're excited, you open the front door, there's a big, giant, bloody icon of Jesus Christ, okay, because the sellers are Catholic. And their agent didn't have the conversation with them to say, hey, you know what, let's try to neutralize the property because not everybody is, a devout Catholic who's going to respond well, to, a bloody Jesus Christ, on the wall, the first thing when you open the door. And, when you see what happens with your clients and that's the impression that they get, then it's very hard for them to see anything, with a clear perspective going through the rest of the house. So even if they would have liked that house otherwise, they're so distracted by the personal belongings, the religious iconography, or like the family photos. Sometimes people are very photogenic and they look great. They've been on these vacations and they've got all these pictures on the mantle, on the walls, and all that ends up doing is drawing attention to those features, and then your clients are distracted because you can't help it. You're like, what's that family like? So what they're not doing is they're not experiencing the space and thinking about, what is it going to be like to project themselves into that space and picture themselves living there.
How important would you say staging is?
It's vital. I think staging is vital. I didn't believe that it had much utility when I first got into the game because I have the ability to project into space. You know, I can imagine what things look like, and I just didn't think it was that big of a deal. But I didn't realize that that's a very, small portion of the buyer public really has that ability to project into space. And I've seen that with a lot of clients
So
too.
it's one of your many superpowers that you have.
I
I
am able to do that. So a lot of the things that I will end up doing, if I'm working with buyers, a lot of times they're, especially if they're first-time home buyers. First-time home buyers are, they're so concerned about the amount of money it's going to take, and are they making the right decision? And really, they're probably going to be in this home for 5 to 7 years, right? Maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit less, but on average between 5 and 7 years. And what those buyers don't realize is that as soon as they move in and that time, starts ticking down, they're probably going to have a bunch of boxes that they haven't even, opened by the time it's ready for them to move away from that property again. Mm-hmm. So they need to be able to be sober enough to realize it doesn't have to be their forever home. But does it have the features that they're looking for that are vital for what their needs are for the time being? And sometimes those properties that we go in, if it hasn't been staged, I am cognizant of what those buyers probably need, and I'll try to help them visualize what can you do with some of the space. Right? Because sometimes a property is closed down because there's extraneous walls, depending on when the property was built, right? There was certain eras where when homes were built, they were built so that most of the, communal activity, was the main focus of the living rooms and, the kitchen area, but bedrooms tiny and small. Like back in the 50s, a lot of homes, you slept in your bedroom. That's it. That's all you did there. But you did everything else out in the communal areas. So if somebody is concerned about that kind of thing, and they're like, well, we're going to do some remodeling here. What should we do, right? So if you have the ability to help folks, see what parts of the home they can modify and help get their imagination going, that's an asset for them. Mm-hmm. And, because nothing is perfect. You're trying to fit an individual fingerprint, to exactly match the kind of fingerprint you think you want. Mm. And you're not going to be able to do that. It's always driven by location. Location is what you're paying for. And that's the one thing that you can't fix, right? You can't change the location other than just, you got to sell and leave. But you can totally change everything about the property itself. You can tear it down, build a whole brand new property if you want, right? But if there's an older kitchen, what kinds of things can you do with the kitchen? What kinds of things can you do with the bath?
Cosmetics.
All the cosmetic stuff. So, your toolbox as an agent, you're honing a lot of different kinds of skills. But in the beginning, where I see agents make mistakes, where I've made mistakes, is spending too much money up front on advertising efforts that you're either not going to be committed enough to do long term to get the payoff, or you're spending money in areas where you don't have the rest of your infrastructure in place to allow that spend to be justified. So in the beginning, I saw there were movie ads in the theaters, right? And I thought, oh, that's a great way to expose myself to the general public here, because when you go to the movies, you sit there and you wait. And of course, this was, before we could reserve a seat and just come last second. But that was like $18,000 spend for me up front in the beginning. And I remember one of my friends who'd been in the industry, and she's like, think about that, And I was like, oh, and it was already done. I wish she had talked to me a week prior, but that really stuck with me, because afterwards I was like, oh, she's right, And while I did get contacted from that advertising effort, most of it, once that ad stops, unless you've hammered yourself into that one or two places in the mind for mind share, it's gone. It's the next agent that's, got your slot. So it's really more of an reinforcement of, a personality. But they have to see, people have to see your signs out there. They have to see your other advertisements. And then when you have the movie ad, then it's like, oh, okay. You might look like a legit agent because you've got a movie theater ad, but that doesn't mean that you are, right? And so people aren't going to just trust, the person who shows up on the TV ad or the movie ad and go, oh, I'm going to call that person. So there's a lot of naive kind of assumptions that I had in the beginning, and then as you start practicing, you realize, okay, am I going to do farming?
During a listing presentation, if the seller does not agree with your recommended list price, how should you respond?
You should respond in a way that's not going to alienate you from that potential client. But I think that a good listing agent needs to be firm on their convictions and their pricing strategy. I don't let somebody price my listing. It's their home, it's their product, but it's my listing, it's my effort, it's my, this is my reputation, this is why they're hiring me, right? And I know some agents have, I guess it depends on the philosophy that you take, but I sort of look at like what we do as being, like a pilot or the captain of a ship, right? But I mean, we have a lot more duties than just that, right? I mean, we're sort of like a conductor of an orchestra, or maybe like a wedding planner, only it's a lot more dire for what we do because it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. But really, somebody's coming to us for guidance, and they have a destination that they want to get to, and they're hiring you because you can get them there safely in the quickest amount of time, and you're going to achieve your fiduciary goals of getting them the most money that they can get, or to save them the most money that you can, right? You have a fiduciary duty as a real estate agent, which is why we're not like, the other kinds of salespeople out there. We're supposed to put other people's, finances ahead of our own financial gain. So, when it comes to when it comes to the list price, I want to make sure that I can get offers for that listing. I don't want to just use it as a means of advertising for myself, because I fundamentally think that breaks our fiduciary duty, right? And I know there's a lot of different philosophies in the industry about how to take a listing. A big one is just let them, if they want to try it, let's go for it. Let's get that listing signed. And I think that's just self-serving, because if it takes 3 weeks to get the seller to figure out that they were wrong and that you were right, what you basically did as an agent is that you said, okay, here's this loaded gun, and you want to shoot yourself in the foot, so let me just help you point it right at the right spot there in your foot. So whenever you're ready to pull the trigger and blow your foot off, please go ahead. And I feel like that's what it's like. So if the seller wants a certain amount of money, okay, we need to acknowledge you want a certain amount of money. But, I didn't buy your house. I didn't make the decisions that you've made, in the decor, or you left it alone, or you didn't maintain it. So, I have to give you an evaluation of what you're trying to sell and what I think I can, sell it for, and for, how long it may take for me to do that.
I like what you said once. I think we had lunch about 2 weeks ago. You said, I'd be a liar.
Oh, yes.
I'd be a liar if I told you that you can get this.
There was one guy, I asked him straight up, do you have an idea of what you'd like to get? And he said 700,000. And this was the place that I had, looked at all the data and everything. And the best case scenario I saw was around 600,000 for, given what the comparable sales were and what the activity of the market was doing at that time. I thought, in my mind, I was thinking max 600,000. Maybe they're going to get like 620 if it's over bids, but 700, not going to happen. And so I had to just tell the guy straight up, no, I can't sell it for 700. And I said I'd be a liar if I said I could, because that's and unfortunately there's enough agents that are out there that they think, okay, I'm gonna do the sale your way. It's your house. You're gonna price it. and I'm going to do the work for you, and I get it done. But if they don't think that they can do it, right? They basically, they're making a justification for just getting the listing, and then they think they're going to hammer the seller down to the price that they need to be at to eventually sell it. But in a seller's market, hey, you could probably get away with that kind of stuff, because if you're on the market long enough, the market will catch up to what your list price was, right? But in any other kind of market, if you price too high, that seller will pay for it, because they will pay for it not only by having to lower their price down to what it should have been, but lower than that, because they're going to be chasing the market. And buyers, when they see a property that's been on the market longer than the average, they start to smell blood in the water. And they're going to wait till that they can make an offer that's low enough for them. And eventually that seller, if they don't have any other activity, is going to have to make a consideration for the fact that they've only got that one offer. So for me, the list price, is something that I need to be in agreement with the sellers absolutely about what it is. And then later on, they want to cancel, and then they get another agent that puts it on at the price that original agent said they should have, because it's human nature. Nobody wants to be wrong and have to look at the person who said that they were wrong, right? Pride is one of these things that, for us in the real estate industry, is something that really gets in the way, and no matter what, you're going to experience it, and it's always going to be a sinking feeling when you get that call from your client saying, we want to go in another direction. And if it really came down to the reason why we want to go in another direction is because we made the mistake of not listening to you, and we're paying for it, and we don't want you to feel rewarded by knowing that you were right. This is what it comes down to. It's because you've done nothing wrong. You gave them the advice, and they didn't take it. But then, when it didn't work out the way they thought, then they want better handhold. And we didn't feel like you held our hands. Well, I told you not to do that. I told you what that was. So over time, you get good at trying to lead somebody without being pushy. You're able to guide them in a way. It's like Jedi mind control, right? You need to be able to affect somebody's thought process in a way that is for their benefit, that helps them see where the hurdle is, so that they can get over the hurdle. That's why objections are so important. You need to get the objections out of your clients so that you can help them get over them. Because if you don't, they will sit there and fester like a landmine that, as soon as you brush against it, it's going to blow up. So this is one of the things that I think new agents don't quite understand, but as they get into these transactions, they build those skills. They realize, my approach, was really ham-fisted. I got to be more delicate. So there's bedside manner that we're always trying to cultivate, and not every agent has allocated the time or effort into their bedside manner, right? Maybe they have with their clients, but then they don't have any bedside manner when it comes to dealing with their fellow agents, right? And you and I both know how important the rapport building and the communication styles are when dealing with somebody on the other side of a transaction. And I've had some situations where you just blown away. You thought you were dealing with one thing, and it turns out it's completely different afterwards.
How important is it to have a good rapport with another agent?
Paul, that is a fantastic question. It is vital. Just like staging is vital, rapport building skills are vital in this industry, because you want to be able to make a connection with another person who is an influencer. So the other agent is, they're not like an obstacle I've got to get around, right? We're going to try to achieve a goal for both of our clients, and we want to do that with the best skill and care that we can. And you might end up having to do another transaction with that agent again, so you want your experience with that agent. If you take the extra time to try to build the rapport with the agent, that may have some play that other agents aren't relying on, right? Because, if you don't know me at all, and I've got a client who wants to buy one of your properties, and maybe maybe I've been showing them up here in Fairfield, right? You don't know me, but if I call you and I say, hey, I've got a client who wants to write on the property. They've asked me if I will come and present their offer in person to you because they want the highest level of care that they can get. Now, maybe I can't, pin you down. Maybe your schedule's too busy or, whatever, but at least I'm going to make the effort. And if it takes me a half an hour to drive over to present my offer to you, representing, what my clients are willing to pay for, what your client is selling, we're going to have a face-to-face interaction at that point. And if you have a good experience talking with me and I present my offer, even if it's lower than your clients want to see, maybe it doesn't have the terms that your clients want to see, but we can have a discussion about those terms. We can build rapport, and we can talk about things that are in the offer that I've written for my clients that maybe you don't want to see, maybe that you want to make an adjustment. And I can go, well, I don't know if that's going to be a critical feature, but I can at least take your concern back to my clients, right? We can have a face-to-face, and we can do as close to belly as we can get. And really, no matter what happens in this industry, it's still a belly-to-belly, kind of situation. Even if it's digital, there's still that quality that is there that kind of requires this face-to-face and the back and forth. And that's why negotiating is another one of the skills that you have to build. And it takes a lot of time to get good at it. And in the beginning, you just don't know what you don't know.
Right.
I mean, if you kind of follow the way that people go from a novice to an expert, in the beginning, it's just that way. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah. You're operating at unconscious incompetence. Right? You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know that you're doing it all wrong. But then you figure it out, right? You're like, I'm doing that wrong. Now you're consciously incompetent, and you know it, so you're working on that.
Right.
And at a certain point, you become consciously competent of what you're doing. And as you do that long enough, then that becomes second nature, and now you're unconsciously competent.
Yes.
And the more things that you can do in that way, where you're unconsciously competent, now you are an expert. There's the whole Malcolm Gladwell thing about you got to do something 10,000 hours before you get to be an expert. And it's, in my opinion, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And you can tell, for the people who have made it through, the arbitrage period in real estate, if you can make it past 2 years, you've gotten over the hump, now your friends and relatives know that you're no longer radioactive, you've managed to run the gauntlet, and you're doing it. Now they may feel more comfortable risking their finances and their relationship with you because they trust you, they like you, they want you to succeed, but they also feel confident that you're not going, to compromise their financial position and the goals that they're trying to achieve. Yeah. So it's a very tough industry that we're in. It's very enjoyable. It's got so many rewards, the kind of relationships that we make, the friendships that we make amongst our colleagues and other industry professionals is phenomenal. It's great. It's very, very satisfying. And if you get to the point where you can start making some money, you can make unlimited amounts of money. I mean, you can also work yourself to death. You can work yourself into a heart attack or, a stroke. I mean, there's all kinds of benefits and dangers for what we do. But it really does take a certain kind of person. It's like I couldn't go back to doing any kind of a 9-to-5 job where I worked for wages. I'm a capitalist. I'm working in the capitalist system, and I own the means of my own production. But I'm the driver of the ship. So that scenario about the listing, where somebody wants to list at a price that I don't agree with, I'm not going to take your listing. Even if it's for me, it's not a loss of the $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 because you can't lose something you never had, right? If I don't have a signed listing agreement with you, I got nothing. even if I have a signed listing agreement with you, it doesn't mean I got $20,000. I have to actually get to the close of escrow to get that $20,000. All I've got is a liability up until that point. All I've got is a potential loss for myself until I get to that point. So if somebody says, hey, I want $700,000, that's like saying, okay, I'm going to get you from point A to point B, but you want to chart out the map of how we're going to get there. And you want to tell me that we're going to go down that pathway because you think that that's a better way. When I'm telling you that ain't a better way. There's a portage there. I don't want to have to pull the boat out of the water, drag it across land for miles and miles and miles. And if we go down that path, we're going to end up having to turn around and go back. And I can't guarantee you that we're going to get, to point A at the right time, or that we're not going to run into pirates if we go back that way, And this is why people hire you, right? So, I get it that people want, to get the business. But I think you have to be, reasoned about, what kind of business you want to get. Because I don't want to wake up in the morning to deal with somebody that I don't respect, or that I don't want to talk to on the phone, or I can't actually make a friend. So many of our clients become close personal friends, and part of that is choosing who to work with. And I like to work with people that I like,
What is your worst experience in real estate?
Oh gosh. So one of the ones that was really challenging for me and super frustrating was getting into contract with somebody I'd known for years, and had in my mind he was kind of a different type of an agent than he ended up showing himself to be when we are actually in contract. He had a situation where there was 2 properties he was selling next to each other, and one of the properties had a home in the front where the main road was, and then a bigger property behind it. And the first house was a rental for the guy with tenant. And then the next property over was an old house and then a big orchard behind it. And I had a client at the time that had a very tricky FHA short sale on his record, but he qualified for another FHA loan and wanted to get a duplex or something where there was an in-law unit or a rental unit. And so this was a perfect situation. If we could get the front house and the house on the other lot, and the other agent said, we'll just do a lot line readjustment. The seller is open to doing that. And I said, okay, well, that seems to me like it's going to take a long time to get through the city. But, the agent very well connected in with the city, and he said, no, it won't take very long. So I'm thinking, okay, you've done this, I'm going to be relying on you, to get that done. No problem, 3 months tops. Okay, well, we're willing to wait. And so we got into the deal. And I was relying on, the expertise of this other agent to do this lot line adjustment. And so we proceeded with all our inspections and did everything, assuming that we're going to get this lot line readjustment. And, the lender went through so many hoops to find an appraiser who would appraise this detached house and this other detached house as a duplex when they weren't even, in a solidified, new lot yet. Right, and so the last
one parcel.
As one parcel. So the last thing that needed to happen for that appraisal to be able to be cleared was the lot line adjustment being recorded. And through this deal, I kept getting pushed and pressured. It's like your contingencies are up. You said that you would be able to get this to move forward. We're not releasing these contingencies because you haven't done what you said you were going to do yet. Oh, well, seller wants you to release these contingencies. Okay, well, you need to have a better conversation with your seller. So, and every time I get into this conversation with this agent, he kept saying, how come my client's the only one who's got put his genitals out on the table. It's like, okay, well, you know, I don't know what you're talking about with, you know, your client's genitals out on the table. You know, it's like, what's that have to do with our contract terms, right? And, you know, just constant communications with this guy that, you know, were so frustrating. And at one point, he sent over a cancellation saying, my seller doesn't want to do this anymore. Like, well, for one thing, you can't send this over. You haven't given my clients, you know, a notice to perform. You haven't done any of the procedural things you would expect, right? So just the fact that you just sent this over to me and you're a seasoned agent, you've been doing this for like 20 years, man. You're a broker. You know you can't do this, right? And at that point, I looked up his track record, found out, oh, he's basically done like, you know, 5 sales a year for 20 years. So, you know, the average agent, if they're a producing agent, does about 5 transactions a year, right? But that's not really enough for you to get the kind of seasoning that you need for the breadth of experience. I mean, just the basics of canceling a contract, right? So we got to the point in this transaction where they had done the lot line split. They had everything pushed through the city. But at the last second, the seller just refused to record it. He said, I'm not going to record it unless it can record simultaneously with the closing. The funding needs to happen at the same time that I sign off on this, you know, lot line adjustment. And it's like, okay, you know that can't happen, right? There's a loan, and a lender needs to know what they're lending on. So you have to record this in order for them to say, yes, we'll give you money. And everybody was saying the same thing, from the title officer, you know, the head of legal at title was telling, you know, this agent, everybody was telling me, it can't be done. In order for us to lend on this, you have to solidify that lot line adjustment, and then we can, you know, then we can fund and we can record right afterwards. Would not do it. And my clients were living in a little apartment in Oakland, out of a box, you know, plastic utensils, paper plates, the whole thing. They had, you know, 2 kids, newborn, and they were just like, what do we do? What do we do? You know, we'll give them, how we release money? You know, we'll release money from the escrow to the seller just to show how much, you know, good faith we're willing to do so that he can record this thing and we can be done with it. And he would not do it. Wow. And we ended up at the last second canceling the deal and going and buying something else. That was probably the most frustrating experience that I've ever had, because we were literally at the last like 1 inch of the goal line, and we were shut down because of stupidity.
How many times have you seen the James Cameron film Terminator 2: Judgment Day?
Once.
Once.
I saw it in theater a long time ago, and I don't think I've seen it since.
David, it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, I'm flattered that you asked me. It's nice. It's nice to think about these kinds of questions every once in a while.
You want to make out?
Oh, man. I was hoping you would ask that question.
Thank you for watching another episode of Behind the Real Estate. If you have questions that you would like me to ask in upcoming interviews, please leave in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so you don't miss the latest interview. Thank you.